You've seen it happen, and it makes no sense. Someone you know, maybe a colleague, maybe a neighbor, suddenly seems to have money everywhere. They're not working harder than you. They're not smarter than you. They didn't win the lottery or inherit a fortune, but their wealth is growing at a speed that feels almost unfair. Meanwhile, you're doing everything right. Investing consistently, spending less than you earn, watching your portfolio like it owes you something. And the growth is fine, decent. Nothing that explains the gap you're watching widen between you and them. So what's actually happening?
Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody in personal finance wants to say out loud. The wealthy don't just have more money. They're operating on a completely different part of the curve. Not a different strategy, not a secret investment, not insider access to deals you'll never see. A different part of the same mathematical curve that you are also on right now. And once you understand where they are on that curve versus where you currently are, everything clicks. The gap isn't about income. It's not about intelligence. It's about position on an exponential timeline. This is what the 843 rule explains, and it's the closest thing to a cheat code that compound growth actually offers. The 843 rule describes the hidden acceleration pattern inside every long-term investment portfolio. It tells you that reaching your first major wealth milestone takes approximately 8 years. Reaching the second milestone takes only 4 more years. Reaching the third takes just 3 years after that. 8 years, then 4, then 3. The timeline doesn't stay the same. It shrinks dramatically every single cycle.
And here's where the rich get richer phenomenon actually comes from. Wealthy people aren't just contributing more money. Many of them crossed the 8-year threshold years ago. They're already living in the 4-year zone or deeper into the 3-year zone where the mathematics work at full velocity. You're not behind because you're doing something wrong. You're behind because you're earlier on the same curve. That's a very different problem, and it has a very different solution.
Let me show you exactly what this looks like in real numbers so you can feel it instead of just understand it. Imagine someone investing $10,000 per year, roughly $833 per month. They're earning a 12% average annual return. They start from zero. After 8 years of consistent investing, they've put in $80,000 of their own money. Their portfolio sits at approximately $123,000. The compounding has added about $43,000 on top of their contributions. Respectable, solid, but nothing that feels like a revolution. Now watch what happens when the curve starts bending. After 4 more years, at the 12-year mark, total contributions reach $120,000. But the portfolio? It's climbed to approximately $241,000. In just 4 years, the account nearly doubled. And for the first time, the gains from compounding have overtaken the total amount personally contributed. The money is now working harder than the person is. This is the crossover. This is the line that separates the early grind from the actual game. And then comes the phase that makes people feel like something must be broken. 3 more years later, at the 15-year mark, total contributions are $150,000. The portfolio has grown to approximately $372,000. In just 3 years, the account added more value than it did in the entire first 8 years combined. The contribution stayed the same. The return percentage stayed the same. The only thing that changed was the size of the base doing the compounding, and that changed everything. This is not a trick. This is not optimistic math. This is what exponential growth actually looks like when you're patient enough to see the whole curve. The problem is that most people only ever see the beginning of it. They see 3 years of slow growth, calculate forward at that rate, and conclude the whole thing is a lie. They're not wrong about what they see. They're just standing in the flattest part of the curve with their back to the steep climb ahead.
Let me explain the mechanics, because understanding why this happens is what builds the patience to survive it. In the early years, your contributions are doing most of the work. If your portfolio is worth $30,000 and earns 12%, that's $3,600 in returns. But you're also contributing $10,000 that same year. Your money contributed nearly 3 times more than compounding did. You're essentially carrying the portfolio on your back. In the middle years, something shifts. Your portfolio crosses $100,000 and now generates $12,000 in returns. You're still contributing $10,000. Now it's almost a fair fight.
Your money and your contributions are pulling equal weight. You can feel the momentum changing, even if you can't fully articulate why. In the later years, the script flips completely. Your portfolio reaches $300,000 and generates $36,000 in returns. You contribute $10,000. Your portfolio is now doing more than 3 times the work you are. You've gone from carrying the portfolio to the portfolio carrying you. This is the shift the 843 rule is really describing. Wealthy people didn't find a shortcut to this phase. They simply started earlier, stayed longer, or both. When you see someone whose wealth seems to multiply on its own, you're watching the return-dominated phase in action. Their money isn't magic. It's just old. Old enough to have crossed through the 8-year grind, survived the 4-year transition, and reached the 3-year acceleration. What looks like privilege from the outside is often just patience you can't see. Let me show you 2 investors whose stories will make this impossible to forget. Julia started investing at 26, $800 per month, every month without exception. At 34, after 8 years, her portfolio sat at around $115,000. Her friends were upgrading apartments and taking international vacations. She was staring at a number that felt underwhelming for 8 years of discipline. But she understood the curve. So she kept going.
By 38, at the 12-year mark, her portfolio crossed $230,000. Her annual returns had quietly surpassed her annual contributions. The account statements started surprising her on the upside instead of disappointing her. The momentum she'd read about was finally something she could feel.
By 41, 15 years in, she had $370,000. The previous 3 years had added more than the entire first 8 years combined. She wasn't doing anything different. The math had simply arrived at the part of the curve where it does its best work. She understood why people called it magic. It had just taken 15 years for the magic to show up.
Daniel started at the same age with the same contribution amount. He lasted 6 years. His portfolio was around $68,000 and the pace felt insulting. He'd been disciplined for 6 years and had less than $70,000 to show for it. So he stopped, redirected the money toward things he could actually enjoy today. His $68,000 stayed in the market and kept growing on its own. By 41, 15 years after he started, that original $68,000 had grown to roughly $190,000 through compounding alone. Not bad at all. Genuinely impressive, really. But Julia had $370,000. Same starting age, same monthly contribution for the first 6 years. The only difference was that Julia kept going through the slow part, and Daniel stopped just before the curve began to bend. The 843 rule would have given Daniel a map. It would have told him that year 6 feeling of stagnation was mathematically expected. It would have shown him that the acceleration was only 2 years away. It would have transformed his frustration from a reason to quit into a signal that he was getting close. That map is worth more than most financial advice you'll ever receive. Now, let me address the thing that quietly destroys portfolios during the early phase. Market drops, volatility, the feeling that the ground keeps shifting under you. You contribute $10,000 over the course of a year, the market pulls back 10%, and your net gain is almost nothing. It feels like running toward a finish line that keeps moving backward. But here's the reframe that changes everything. During the contribution-dominated phase, market drops are not your enemy. They are a discount event on shares that will compound for decades. Every share you buy during a downturn is a share that will multiply through the entire acceleration phase ahead of you. The investors who quietly built the most wealth are the ones who kept buying when everything felt the most uncertain. They weren't brave. They just understood what phase they were in.
Volatility becomes genuinely dangerous only once you've crossed into the return-dominated phase. A 10% drop on a $500,000 portfolio wipes out $50,000. That's real money with real consequences. But a 10% drop on a $40,000 portfolio during your early years, that's a buying opportunity in disguise, funded partly by your next contribution. Knowing which phase you're in completely changes how you should feel about market swings. Here's how to apply the 8-4-3 rule to your own situation, starting today. First, figure out which phase you're in right now. Compare your total annual investment returns to your total annual contributions. If contributions are bigger, you're in the early accumulation phase. Completely normal. Stay the course. If they're roughly equal, you're in the transition zone. You're close to the bend. Do not stop now. If returns exceed contributions, you've crossed into the acceleration phase. Your only job is to not interfere.
Second, set milestone targets that match the 8-4-3 pattern rather than arbitrary round numbers. If you're starting from zero today, your 8-year goal might be $130,000 to $150,000. Your 12-year goal might be $280,000 to $300,000. Your 15-year goal might be $420,000 or more, depending on your contribution rate. These milestones account for the natural shape of the curve. They'll feel slow early, and then suddenly you'll blow past them faster than you expected.
Third, stop measuring progress by looking backwards. The investor who stares at where they started will always feel behind. The investor who projects forward along the curve will feel something very different. Run the numbers 15 years forward from your current position. That projection is almost always stunning. The wealth is already mathematically locked in. You just haven't reached the part of the timeline where it becomes visible yet.
There's one more dimension to this that almost nobody talks about. The 8-4-3 pattern doesn't only apply to investment portfolios. It shows up in careers, in businesses, in creative work, in any system where consistent effort compounds over time. The first 8 years of a career often feel like grinding for incremental rewards. Skills build slowly, reputation grows quietly. The senior people around you seem untouchably far ahead. Then the 4-year transition arrives. Your network starts creating opportunities instead of just contacts. Your skills command premium compensation instead of standard rates. Each raise builds on a larger base. Each year accelerates the one before it. And then the 3-year phase hits. Senior roles, equity, consulting leverage, speaking opportunities. Your earning power curves upward with the same steep slope as an investment portfolio that's finally crossed the threshold. Most people abandon careers just like they abandon portfolios right before the acceleration begins. They grow frustrated in year 5 or 6, pivot to something new, and reset their compounding clock entirely. Understanding the 8-4-3 pattern helps you recognize early frustration for what it actually is, not a signal to quit, a signal that the math is working exactly as intended. So here is what the wealthy actually know that most people don't. They're not smarter, they're not luckier in most cases. They simply reach the part of the curve where money compounds faster than they can earn it through effort alone. And they stayed there long enough to watch it accelerate again and again. The secret isn't a strategy. It isn't a portfolio or a product or a private opportunity. The secret is understanding that the curve is real. The acceleration is coming, and the only variable you control is whether you're still in the game when it arrives. 8 years feels like a long time when you're in year 2 staring at modest numbers. 4 years feels substantial when you're in year 9 watching momentum finally build. 3 years passes so fast you barely register it as it's happening. And then you're standing on the other side, looking at a portfolio that adds more in returns each year than you could ever contribute through income alone. Wondering how you didn't understand this sooner. Watching people at the beginning of their curve look at yours and call it luck. It was never luck. It was the 8-4-3 rule. And now you know exactly where you are on the curve, exactly what's coming, and exactly why you cannot afford to stop. The magic is real. It's just backloaded. And the only people who experience it are the ones who refused to quit before it arrived.